Welcome, everybody. Today we have an exciting guest, Dr. Yuri Crown, which is a member of our faculty. Dr. Yuri Crown is a physicist, originally from Russia, studied there as a physicist for more than 30 years, graduate at Gorky University. And most interesting, he done his doctorate in science. And can you tell us some more about your doctorate? What was the thesis of the subject of your?
Yeah, I was researching theoretically and experimentally so-called nonlinear optics phenomena, which is interaction of powerful laser light with matter. Nonlinear processes which happens when you put this light on the matter. And there were a lot of unexplained phenomena at that time, and that's what we were doing in Moscow University, where I was kind of supervisor of experimenters. We were trying to explain them, and we successfully did it.
And then you came in America. Now you're here almost 30 years. And now your field of interest, as everybody know, I call Dr. Crown the Hahnemann of our time, because he's the one who has studied and learned how to harness what we can call subtle energy, and imprint some mineral water-based formula with subtle energy. So how your research and field of interest in Russia conduct you in America and relate of what with the research you are doing now?
You know, this phenomena which our I would say frontier science calls subtle energy, and I would say that word energy is not very exactly describes this phenomenon. Ancient called it life force, and that definition is, in my opinion, is much more accurate, because actually what they state and what we experimentally confirmed, that this subtle energy or life force is working like a software for physiology, for psychology, and can help with many issues which we human beings have in our lives, and being combined with good substance, supplements or even drugs, if it's right combination, can tremendously enhance and improve our ability to handle our problems, I would say, whether health problems, whether psychological problems, and so on. That's why I was.
So I like this kind of idea, like in your model of theoretical model in the course that you are teaching, you're speaking about physical energy and dark matter and dark energy. So that dark energy will be like a kind of a transcendent or a subtle brain of software guiding the physical body that we can interact with.
You know, our science discovered so-called dark matter and dark energy very recently, just 20 years ago. And before, we didn't have any idea that 96% of the universe is occupied by some substance and energy which we have no idea about. And right now, it's considered by science like a homogeneous field of some unknown energy, which is not measurable directly, but nevertheless can be observed if you research astronomical phenomena like movement of galaxies, and some substance which also is not measurable, but nevertheless it has mass, and that's why it can be detected. Its presence can be detected, and they consider it as a kind of homogeneous field of some unknown particles, subatomic particles, and some energy which is also unknown. But ancients thought differently. They thought, and they experimentally used this knowledge in acupuncture, for instance, that this energy is not just kind of not related to human being. They named it at least spectrum with some spectrum of that energy. They called it life force. And this life force, according to them, influences our physiology and everything which is going in our human body, actually in any living organism, not just in human. So I was interested in this concept, and I observed some strange phenomena produced by human being projecting this energy. And I got interested together with other scientists in Russia. We organized a group which researched that in Russia. And then after coming here, I decided to create technology which is capable to harness it, at least to some extent. And we succeeded in that.
So before we go in the domain of harnessing subtle energy, you brought this idea of a life force.
Yeah.
And then I found also in your course an interesting concept, when you were speaking about the flower of life. I know it's maybe not your favorite subject, but you speak about a set of a basic element governed by a small set of algorithms. So in other words, it's kind of the ancient has already found a way to decode how this subtle energy is working.
In terms of our modern science, it is a theory of how these dark matter and dark energy behave, and what kind of laws are governing that energy and matter. And they created this so-called tree of life algorithm, which is applicable according to them to everything in the universe, and including how physical matter was created from that dark matter. And what we can do, unfortunately, we cannot investigate it with our regular scientific equipment. It's not measurable energy and substance, but we can create some experiments on observing effect of this life force. And if it's really life force, it should influence us on all levels, like on even on genetic level, on a physiological level, on cellular level, so on and so on. That's what was my goal, to observe how this life force influences, or subtle energy, whatever you call it, influences our life. And we did a lot of research trying to understand some laws of these, and it's strange laws, I would say, very unusual and not explainable by regular knowledge of science about energy, about let's say electromagnetic energy, about gravitational energy, so on and so on.
So from our understanding, there is like this subtle energies, dark matter, dark energy, but there is no way to directly assess or measure these.
Yes, that's why our science.
And then you have an indirect way. But before we go there, you have so exposed in your course, the subtle atomic model. It's like you have the atomic model, the subparticle, the quartz, and then the ultimate particle. So you like to speak about this, because it's probably important to understand that before we go in the experimentation, or
it is all theory. It is a hypothesis how it works, how this subtle energy directed, and if you wish, in this three-dimensional physical world from that more dimensional, according to this ancient science, more dimensional, and even our science admits right now that there are much more than 3 dimensions in the universe, and these subatomic particles of dark matter exist in more than 3-dimensional world. So this is not just ancient people supposed. But anyway, as I said, this concept of how this energy is coming to this 3-dimensional world, it is just concept. It's just hypothesis. But it's very logical hypothesis, and they very in resonance, I would say, with this picture of tree of life which you mentioned. But it's still theory, and as a physicist I was more interested in, whether this theory is right or not, but whether experimental applications of this energy confirms what ancient said about it, and it really earns, I would say, this term life force, as they call it, or it's just imagination of ancients, you know. And Chinese used this force in acupuncture. They called qi, energy flowing in acupuncture meridians. And by the way, there was a research on acupuncture meridians by Dr. Joy Johnson at Irvine University using ultrasound and standard, you know, fMRI methods. He showed that energy or whatever which is flowing in acupuncture meridians and behavior of acupuncture meridians are totally unexplainable by modern neurology, of course, and any kind of physiology which we know about. For instance,
but he was able to demonstrate if you puncture a point, I think it was the 62 bladder, right? You had some change at the MRI. Would you like comment about that?
Yes. Using MRI, he showed that this energy comes from this point to the occipital cortex at least 200 times faster than any neurological process could explain. So this behavior and how these points of acupuncture meridians behave, totally unexplainable from our physiological or physical point of view. That's why.
Absolutely interesting. And did you do, by the way, also experience with the experiment where you will load some essential oil with your mineral based products, right?
Yes, right.
And you get the same outcome?
Same results. What we wanted to prove that energy or whatever produced by our technology has the same properties as this qi flowing in acupuncture meridians. And for that, it would be logical to compare how this energy influence acupuncture meridian. That's what we did with Joy Jones. We created energetic pattern, as we call, special formula, infused it into oil, just regular oil. I don't remember what kind, I believe coconut oil, and put this on acupuncture point. And the same effect which needles produced on this point happened when we put Dr. Jones.
So this experiment we were speaking about, you know, where instead to use an acupuncture needle, you were using an oil imprint with energetic information. So in some ways support the idea that you know, we can harvest subtle energy to change, have an effect at least on the MRI. And you've done also research on heart variability too.
Right.
This is another scientific parameters, you know, the
heart rate variability is equipment and method which is accepted by FDA, the standard, more or less standard method of assessing health and I would say functioning of autonomic nervous system. And we observed a definite and very fast effect of energy patterns, energy formulas, which we created on different parameters of autonomic nervous system. For instance, we could calm down sympathetic nervous system extremely fast, like literally in several minutes, significantly. And the same way as it should be, parasympathetic nervous system was significantly improved. Let's say deviation from normal to the left, I would say, to negative part, or 2 or 3 deviations, literally in 15 minutes was changed to normal, which means that this energy somehow affects autonomic nervous system, which is actually main computer of our body. And if you know how to manipulate computer of the body, of course you can influence physiology. So that was very important, and long-term research. Dr. Jeff Marangel in Pennsylvania did this research years ago, and he took thousands of heart rate variability tests with people with different problems, and seeing how subtle energy changes heart rate variability response. And it was absolutely no doubt that this computer.
So it's very interesting, because we know today heart variability is a key parameter to monitor the cardiovascular health. It's even a way to predict, heart attacks and so on. And this is why now there is a lot of effort, or people try to train, their breathing, the heart variability to improve their, decrease their risk factor. Yeah. So, and you done also research with water and plant too, growing herbs, or?
We did a lot of research, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, but it's very important because here we are, at modern time. Hahnemann, at 200-300 years ago, in some way had the instinct to speak about this idea of a signature, and change the subtle energy or the molecular structure of the water, but not today. We are totally another level where we can in some way substantially, indirectly, the effect of subtle energy. So heart variability is one of them, MRI, and then what you've done with a plant and water.
Actually you can use any scientific method to see effect of vital force or life force or subtle energy on any kind of parameters of human physiology or psychology. So, as you said, heart rate variability is very important, but we also wanted to observe how it affects plants. And what we did, for instance, Dr. Levingood in Michigan did the whole research how different energetic formulas influences, let's say, germination of seeds. And while control, so he took old seeds, like 7-year-old seeds, and the germination of these seeds was less than 50%, like about 40%. When the same seeds were germinated into in a water which was infused with the energy pattern, certain energy pattern, the effect was about 90%.
Wow.
So, and it was consistent. It's not just one experiment. He did a lot of experiments. He observed how seedlings grow after being watered by this water infused with energy, and observed dramatic differences. And it's very interesting that different plants were responsive to different energetic patterns. So a lot of research can be done in this direction. Right now we are doing research in Washington State with some seeds of many plants which are watered by water which came through filters filled with crystals.
Let's speak about this experiment. This is a very interesting one.
It sounds very new age, right?
So so just that the people understand, you have an expertise to imprint mineral base with subtle energy. This comes
right. The whole technology.
And then, but there is no limit. You can also use. You can also imprint crystal with information.
Yeah, any kind of substance can be infused.
Yeah, but crystal is probably a special one because the quartz has some,
it has a memory, I would say. Yeah. And yes, we infused
the memory of crystal. I like that.
So we infused. Yeah, you call it that because when you infuse it with this energy, and my idea was to combine, this ancient knowledge about this life force with modern technology. So, and use it as we use, modern technology for any other kind of energies. So what we did, we infused these crystals, then we put them in a filter. Water goes through this filter and goes to plants, different plants. And right now, they already reported that they observe tremendous difference between, let's say, roots of those plants which are growing in regular water or the same water which came, the same source of water, but came through filters infused with infused crystals. So no matter how strange it sounds, but this is experimental fact, and being real scientists, we need to look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
without any judgment, right?
right. we don't we don't need to be prejudiced. So since ancient told these superficial things,
Absolutely.
we need to deny them.
Mm-hmm.
It appeared that they were pretty smart people and they knew what they are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So we observed it on plants, we observed it on effect on cells, and even on gene expression.
Yeah, that was my next question. What about genes now? Because everybody's
Yeah.
speaking about genes,
Genes are basic of our programming
Of
in
course,
the body. And a lot of talk right now goes about how environment influences us.
Mm-hmm.
Epigenetic, as you know, this new science called. And
So were you
what the
working
mechanism-
with mineral substance base to see to do the experiment with the genes, or what were you using?
No, we were using. It's very simple. We are taking the same liquid, which is used for cells, genes of which are measured, activity of genes are measured, and infuse this liquid. So there is no.
So still with the crystal experiment?
No,
something
not
different.
crystal experiment. Right from our equipment, we take this liquid, which is used for growing these cells, and infuse this liquid with this specific energetic pattern.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
it's compared with the same liquid which is not infused, and that's it. There is no any substance different in this experiment, in control and in experimental samples, just infused liquid. And we see that, not we, it's a third-party experiment. The experiment was done in Beech Tree Lab on Rhode Island many times. I don't want to go to discussion of details of it because it can be for hours. But we did many experiments which confirmed that specifically formulated energetic patterns are capable to change genes expression.
What about longevity? Were you looking at the longevity genes?
All of us already need it. So, yeah, we are working on these formulas. But what is interesting, Dr. Paul, that, people speak about epigenetics. What mechanism of epigenetic is? Nobody actually knows. There are some suggestions here and there, yes, but what this experiment shows that actually at least part of this mechanism are connected with this so-called subtle energy. Because if you see that this energy influences gene expression, it means that energy of environment can influence them.
Oh.
And that's how environment can influence our genetic activity.
And you done also research, and I know you Russian scientists are very specialized in this, how mind can relate with subtle energy. You done some research with this too.
How what?
So how the mind, can be an assessment. The mind?
Yeah. Well, that is not our first research. The first research in this direction was done by Chinese, literally more than about 40 years ago.
Yeah, you have this Qigong doctor, right?
Yes.
With radioisotope
Yes.
experiment. Yeah.
Changing radioactive decay rate, which is absolutely fundamental result. This experiment was repeated by more than 50 times. For years and years, they did this research in China and published a lot of articles and book about this. And if you if you knew professor of Pennsylvania University, he participated in this research, and even on that book is his photograph. So a lot of different people from different countries participated in this and observed the results. As I said, it was published, but strangely enough, our science doesn't put attention to it. But this Professor Rustam Roy many times reported about it in the United States. it is strange to me that science doesn't put attention, because it's fundamental result that
Absolutely.
is energy.
So in other words, this Qigong doctor, master,
Could
you
change
know,
radioactive
with his
decay rate.
hand was changing
Yeah, even
the
not hand, with his mind.
with his mind.
Like you said, yeah.
Okay.
Which means, and he did it even on a distance.
Okay.
Yeah. So this fact
Mhm.
never was discussed in official literature, official scientific literature, which is very sad, because it's fundamental result. It means that this dark energy
Mhm.
is capable to somehow affect fundamental forces which we know, like
Mhm.
this weak force which is responsible for radioactive decay rate.
Mhm.
So what we noticed, that we knew about this experiment, and we of course tried to record energy of a healer, for instance, who projects this energy, consciously projects this energy on a person. And we found how to record it. And we recorded.
Okay, this is kind of your expertise, right?
Yeah.
You can record satellite energy the same way you can imprint, you know, substance with satellite energy.
You know, the matter
This is your secret, right?
it's not so much secret. I can reveal some details.
Yeah,
of it.
please,
For
so,
instance,
do
for-
so.
For instance, and it is different from my initial technology, because initial technology was based on plasma-based generator, which vibration of plasma generated this subtle energy or life force, whatever you call it, which was recorded in a very unusual way, and then this recording was reproduced, amplified, and projected on some substance, like you said, trace minerals, which are now being infused after this projection with specific subtle energy pattern.
Mhm.
But when we decided to record energy of healers, you cannot use the same technique. What we can do?
Mhm.
So what we did is very, very strange, but we decided, since these trace minerals, let's say, or crystals, somehow can keep information inside of them when you project this energy on them, let's try this healer to take it in his or her hand, these minerals, keep them do their job, and then we take it and record in our equipment.
Mhm.
And you know, it works.
Interesting.
So we had energy patterns recorded from healers, send it to doctors who were open for research, let's say for this, using the same heart rate variability, and we saw absolutely definite responses. And it was blind research. People didn't know what exactly they are drinking. They just was drinking water.
Mhm.
So
And then it guided me to ask the question about power of intention. So in
Yeah,
other words,
that's what it is.
this is what it is.
that's what it is. The power and intention work through this energy. Somehow our mind, and it is a big, big question, how our mind connected to this energy. It raises a lot of questions about existence of universal mind. And then religion can have some practical basis. So if this, how can it be that the energy of this universe, this dark energy, suddenly somehow connected to human mind? Was it always from the beginning of the universe? If so, means that mind somehow connected before even Earth was created to this energy. So there is some mind which can project this energy on everything in the universe. So that's very interesting.
I don't know if you're aware of
It's philosophical
the work of
question.
Lynn McTaggart, you know, with the power of intention,
of
and
course,
it's her last book with Power of Eight. So she's done a lot
Right.
of
I know these books.
experimentation with, you know, people, circle of people between 6 and 12 that direct healing intention to one person, and so
But
in some way you corroborate this kind of experiment with your research.
right, and the matter is that it makes possible this research with regular scientific methods. For instance, blind research. We can infuse this group. Let's say McTaggart was creating. I need to talk to her about it
Mhm.
Please tell her.
We will work this out.
Yeah, what we can do, we can record this energy
Hmm.
of this group and then make blind experiment. One water is infused with this energy, another is not, and people don't know it is triple blind, experiment, double blind.
So can you record this? You have to be in lab to record that, or it can be
No,
done?
we can use the same method. We can give them these minerals. When they work, they keep these minerals in the group. Project their intent to these minerals. Can you imagine? Intent, record
And then-
it,
and then send it back.
And then we will record this, and then do this blind scientific experiments. And then it will be proof. We have this proof, but we need to do it scientifically and publish it. That this intent works through energy. Intent means that somehow with our mind we project this program into this energy. And this energy is capable to record this intent and bring it to the object of intent. This is incredible. This is
Absolutely. I'm kind
Yeah.
of very excited now because I'm thinking about also, I don't know if you know my project Noosphere, where we gather hundreds of people online around this intention, heal yourself, heal
Right.
the world. So
so let's do this experiment.
let's do this experiment,
Because that would be scientific proof of interaction of human mind. One more, because we already have, and Chinese did have this experiment with radioactivity, but that would be direct experiment of what power intent is, how it works, a mechanism of power intent action. That would be great.
So can you also the same reading with mineral base but with crystal? For example,
Yes.
you
Yes.
have you
can
give an
use
intent.
crystal, yeah. We found that these minerals, for some reason, concentrated trace minerals, are wonderful holders of this energy, and they can hold it for years and years.
Wow.
We did experiments with several doctors, taking bottles which were infused 10 years ago, and they didn't know which is 10 years ago, which is just today. And the effect on heart rate variability was absolutely the same, undistinguishable.
Wow.
So it means that for 10 years, these minerals kept this information.
So I am also teaching, and I will bring you in my yard, this meditation course
Yes.
where I have also implement crystal when in the use of meditation, because people to have like a deep experience in meditation, they need in some way to be prepared with the breathing, and this is what we're teaching, and then the mantra, and then the crystal as also a tool to refine this experiment. So I guess this is in the same alley.
Yes, and
You
we
can-
can infuse this crystal with the experiment, and people can hold it in the hand and be affected. Or we can infuse it in the same water or trace minerals, and several drops of these minerals in the water can affect meditation process. And again, it can be with, let's say, brain waves registering, can be experimentally proven and researched. Yeah.
And so I think we have done
Yeah.
a pretty good turn, circle around. But is there anything you would like to share or our experiment? We didn't speak about during this.
Very important question to me is it's education of people about it, because you see our technological age producing so many different technologies, and we don't know how these technologies affect environment. And now we understand that this effect can be not only chemical but also energetic. And if epigenetics,
You're speaking about pollution, energetic pollution,
right,
or dirty energy. You don't also
whatever
research
you
on
call
that.
it, yeah, but this energetic pollution can affect even our gene expression. And then we have real danger. We need to research it. we need to see how we can compensate these negative effects of this pollution, and that's what we are doing too. We are doing this using specific energetic pattern for, and we have first results showing that we can compensate, let's say, effect of this pollution on human brain waves. So this is big deal, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's another field.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
You're speaking about the EMF and cell phone and smartphone and so on.
Right. All this electromagnetic pollution produces disturbance, if you wish, in this life force field, or whatever you call it, dark energy field. Anyway, I don't like this name, but whatever. This research would have, I would say, importance for future generations, because humanity needs somehow to survive in this technological pollution.
Oh yes, everybody's thinking about longevity, of course, and have the best genes, but also we need this kind of awareness that
absolutely
we're not exposed to negative energy, EMF, and so on. Even to the food too. There's
it affects everything.
Absolutely.
Since as we see this energy being infused in the water, let's say, can produce effect on plants. It means even plants can be affected by this negative, I would say, energy, or whatever you call it, this pollution.
So, is there any products or formula you have created or patents in the sense that you can detox, from these?
Yes, we do.
Because if you travel today, it's very difficult to avoid EMF, GMOs in your food, and
GMO is more complicated question, of course. But about about pollution, energetic pollution. Yes, we have formula which we call EMF transformer, because it transforms effect of electromagnetic field, which, as I said, shows that at least on the brain waves, it can compensate negative effect of cell phone pollution, if you wish. So it opens possibility for further research in this direction, and I think, as I said already, it would have importance for future generations.
So I like to end on this note, and I remind to people who are listening, the course Saturn Energy 101, where you will go more in depth in all the subjects we have discussed. So there is so much to learn about this Saturn Energy, dark matter, and Dr. Crown is certainly the pioneer, I know, that has explored this field. Not only with passion, but also with this scientific ground, so that give even more serious to the whole subject.
That's what our purpose was, to create technology which allows real scientific research of this phenomenon, which is called subtle energy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Crown.
Nice to be here.
Thank you
for inviting.
Thank you.